Hello, and welcome to another episode from Season 6 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a passion for scary movies. Each week we pick a different horror movie and dissect it to figure out what it was trying to accomplish, how well it did, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season we're changing things up. We're devoting a whole season to reviewing Esquire's list of the 50 scariest movies of all time. In each episode, we'll break down a different movie, talk about how scary it really was, and then update our rankings to prove how much smarter we are than the other people on the internet. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the conversation. Well, we're working our way through Esquire's list of the 50 scariest movies of all time, and this week we were supposed to watch Candyman, but It turns out it's impossible to stream that legally.
Yeah, 100%.
I looked everywhere. I even looked at some more questionable places, and they didn't have it either. Yeah.
I was like really confused. Like that blew my mind. I was like, I don't understand how you can't even rent it anywhere.
Yeah. Well, and it's like it's kind of a cult classic. I mean, it definitely has a following. It's not like some just super obscure thing that nobody's heard of. Like people would be paying to watch it if it were available, but it's not.
And you can also like rent Candyman 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And it's like, why can't you do Candyman?
Yeah. So I was really looking forward to that one just because it's one that I've heard about for a long time, but I've never seen. Mm-hmm. And I know that it's kind of like an indie horror movie in that people that are in the know about that movie, and I want to be part of that cool group. And then the next movie on the list after was Jaws, which is like the most commercial, well-known thing ever. So we decided to skip Candyman and go with Jaws, and I kind of had a bad attitude about it.
Oh, really?
I did, yeah.
Because you had to skip Candyman?
Yeah. And I was like, oh, I'm going to lose my street cred. We're just watching this movie everybody's seen. But I found out, coming back to this movie and trying to look at it as a horror movie and more analytically, I guess, than any way I've watched it before, kind of made me appreciate it more.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I think it also, well, on the one hand, I feel like it was just a really high-quality movie made at what I consider to be kind of the height of practical effects in movies, which I love.
Yeah.
But I also think it's going to bring up some really interesting discussions about horror and like what makes a horror movie versus what makes it not a horror movie, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
It's a very good call. I was interested to see what you thought as far as horror-wise goes, what to categorize it.
Yeah.
We definitely... Yeah.
Yeah, and I hadn't seen this movie in probably, 6 or 8 years. It had been a long time.
I actually hadn't ever seen it.
Oh, really?
Mm.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I actually own a copy. And do you know how I own a copy? So I ordered a pedal, like a guitar pedal, off of eBay. And the guy that I got it from randomly included like 4 DVDs.
Really?
Yeah, he just sent it to me and he's like, hey, thanks for ordering. I'm trying to get rid of some stuff. Here's some movies. And one of them was Jaws.
Well, that's cool.
So I've owned Jaws on DVD for like 12 years from some unknown source. So if that guy is listening, thank you.
And if you're not listening, no thank you.
That's very true. All right, I'm going to introduce this, and we'll get down to it.
Let's do it.
In 1975, Universal Pictures unleashed Steven Spielberg's summertime thriller Jaws on the world. Jaws follows a small-town sheriff who teams up with a marine biologist and a professional shark hunter to protect a small New England beach town from an enormous man-eating great white shark that is terrorizing the waters. From Harry's bad hat to the need for a bigger boat, this movie became a huge part of pop culture with many memorable scenes that are still referenced today. It was made on a budget of $9 million and brought in over $470 million at the box office. It can currently be rented for streaming on Amazon Prime Video. Unlike Candyman.
Yeah. Yeah, also for the record, like, if you even try to buy it on Amazon, it's like $20, but like the Blu-ray, it says like you can't play in North American DVD or Blu-ray players.
Oh, weird.
Like it's just really, really hard to find.
Only bootlegs.
I guess so. So I have a couple facts about this.
Okay.
So this movie's based off a book. That's all I got.
Moby Dick?
Yeah, Moby Dick. But the author of the book, Benchley, was
Herman
last
Melville.
name close. He has a cameo in the film.
Oh.
He's a news reporter who addresses the camera on the beach. This is like during 4th of July, like the big festivities.
Yep.
That's pretty cool. I have another fact about this movie. The shark doesn't fully appear in a shot until an hour and 21 minutes into the 2-hour film. Like, completely. The reason is because the reason it isn't shown is because the mechanical shark that was built rarely worked during filming. So Spielberg had to create inventive ways, like the Quint's yellow barrels, to shoot around the non-functioning shark. Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It took 159 days to shoot. It was only scheduled for 65 days. I don't have the...
That's some pretty good time management right there.
Yeah, I know. I don't have the official note for this, but I thought it was kind of interesting. So, Steven Spielberg had a film called Duel.
Was it an old one?
I think it was a film. It may have been a TV. Yeah, it was a film. I guess it didn't do so well, or whatever movie he did before this didn't do so well. I think it was Duel. Anyway, but he was having trouble sleeping. He was thinking he was gonna get pulled off this film and just stressing out. So what he did is, and I read this on 2 different sites, kind of, he put celery under his pillow because the smell of it calmed him and it helped him sleep at night.
I could not tell you at all what celery smells like just off of memory.
I didn't think
it's
it would
never
have
made
smell,
an impression on me. Yeah.
but I would think that he would have to wash his pillow sheet or the pillow often.
I mean, everybody's into weird stuff, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Okay, another fact: the Orca, the boat that they are using, it actually sank for real and nearly ruined an entire day's footage. So the entire ocean portion of the Jaws shoot, was plagued by technical difficulties, as mentioned with the shark earlier. But the Orca began to actually sink with Robert Shaw, Roy Scheider, and Richard Dreyfuss on board. This was due to a malfunction. The boat started leaking, causing Spielberg to send another boat in a mad dash to retrieve the actors and crew from the sinking ship. One camera was submerged, but technicians were able to salvage the film inside, saving Spielberg of having to add another day to the already long schedule. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another fact about the film. Robert Shaw. So Robert Shaw plays, what's his name? Quaint?
Captain Ahab.
Captain Ahab. I'm thinking that we may have watched 2 different movies.
Well, I watched The Meg starring Jason Statham.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Robert Shaw plays the guy who's the experienced shark hunter. So apparently he drank a lot and was often volatile on the set. He was also frequently worried about his taxes. I'm going to read you exactly what this says. The native Brit was reportedly being pursued by both IRS and British taxmen, causing the actor to flee the country on weekends for Canada to avoid facing a tax liability for spending too many hours on U.S. soil. In fact, Shaw had to forego his salary on the film in order to make amends with the IRS for the charges of tax evasion. It says here, sadly, it would seem both it was seen both that Bruce the shark and loan sharks bested shop. So Bruce the shark was actually the name of the shark. As far as like the mechanical shark that they created, they named it Bruce. The reason why they named it Bruce is because
Moby Dick was taken.
Prominent entertainment lawyer in Los Angeles. So when the crew was building the 3 large mechanical sharks for the film, they jokingly nicknamed them after Spielberg's attorney, the Bruces. So,
interesting.
Anyway, but here's also another little fun fact. Pixar paid homage to Spielberg's Bruce in the 2003 Finding Nemo, giving their own sharks characters the same lawyerly moniker. Anyway,
I feel like if we could do a whole episode of just like listing things that have referenced Jaws in one way or another.
There's like I did not have any issue trying to find that. Anyway, so I think that those are my facts for this movie.
Yeah.
Also, the movie was rated PG.
Yes.
It was initially rated R, but they changed it to PG, which is pretty crazy to think about, considering there were like torn limbs.
Yeah.
And like heads under. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, we're gonna get into all that. Just you wait.
Movies.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that all the issues that they had and how they had to end up showing the shark a lot less than they had originally planned. And I had read some about it in getting ready for this, where people have compared the directorial style to Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
And then Steven Spielberg agreed.
Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah, very, very like nuanced, very suggestive, not a lot of like showing you the thing that you're scared of. And then I'm reading about like all these reasons why they couldn't actually show it as much as they wanted to. And I'm like, that's some Class A retroactive
right
projection right there. That's pretty impressive. But it's interesting because one thing I read, and I don't know if it's true or not, but they had said that one of the things they added later to add to that like suggestion of the shark instead of showing it directly was the very, very classic soundtrack. So the dun, like that was a thing that wasn't originally composed for the movie but was added as they went along because they needed something to fill that space of like signaling that it's on its way, kind of like the whistle in M.
Oh yeah,
like the same type of deal where they were using the sound to let you know what was happening without having to show it.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think about, like something that was just thrown in like that is widely known.
It's real conic.
Yeah,
real conic. Throwback for several episodes ago. Yeah. But yeah, so like I mentioned before, this was a very high quality movie. The camera work and the way that the shots were set up was just amazing, and the sound was really good. That soundtrack, in certain parts was very fitting and very memorable. And then the acting, I think, was actually really good. Robert Shaw, for all of his flaws, was delivered a pretty impressive performance. And because of that, I mean, just from the level that it was made and how much effort they put into everything and kind of the grand scale that it was on, that everything about this movie was very deliberate.
Yeah.
And so, in looking at it from, is this a horror movie? I really don't know what to say. Because if I break it down, there are some really great, really scary, really memorable horror scenes in this movie, but it really didn't feel like a horror movie through most of it. And I don't know that most people would call it a horror movie.
Yeah, I think, and I was thinking about this myself, like, this had one of the better horror scenes, one of my favorite horror scenes, even though I just watched it for the first time when doing this podcast.
Which one?
It was the scene where Richard Dreyfuss is going down. He finds the tooth in the sunken ship, or
that was real good.
Boat, and the head comes out.
Yes.
That, like, I actually jumped at that. and I don't normally do that.
Well,
I really
but
really
even,
don't normally jump.
even the setup for that though, just when he gets in the water and you
Yeah.
know that the shark is out there and it's just
Right.
him in that water with the flashlight swimming, super vulnerable, and you don't know if anything's going to happen. And then he comes up on the boat and he finds that big bite, and you're just waiting for something to come take a bite out of him. That was
Exactly.
and then when they added that kind of the intensity of the two corpses as well, that was just icing on the cake.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I thought it was a brilliant setup, because they were leading you to think one thing, or he's getting into the water, you think it's going to be an obvious shark thing. Well, that's not what jumps out at him. It's the head that comes out in the ship, and it was just the way it's set up was just, I thought it was really brilliant. But yeah, so there's the scenes that are happening that I'm like, oh hell yeah, that's actually, I feel like that's a horror scene. Overall though, the reason why I don't think it's necessarily a horror movie, and I wondered if it was kind of the same for you, but it's not like we're beach goers. We're in the middle of America.
I love the beach more than anything in the world, but go on.
Yeah, but we're not there. I mean, you could go there on vacation, but it's not like we live, close. I guess you're closer now in Austin, but where we grew up,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just lakes and ponds.
Mhm.
We're in the middle of America, and so I guess for me, I don't have that tie to being scared by something, in the ocean, where I can't necessarily relate, I guess.
So just in general, like the environment was unfamiliar to you, so it was harder to
Yeah.
like picture yourself in it.
But now that being said, though, I will say this: I do also understand. I mean, it didn't necessarily mess with me. I can understand the ocean thing. I did live in Orlando for a little bit of time, and I remember people talking, like when we went to the ocean. We went once or twice. When we went to the ocean, about the fear of like being in a body of water that you can't see what's going on,
Mhm.
And that really freaking people out. But I mean, it didn't, just didn't strike a note with me. That being said, like I said, I mean, I still had the really great scenes of it. I just wouldn't call it a horror movie. It was almost like a thriller for me.
Yeah. Well, so there were a lot of, like you said, really good horror scenes, a lot of really scary ones. And I think that there was even some callbacks to like more old school or classic horror. Like that monologue where Robert Shaw is talking about when he was in the military and being stranded in the ocean, the USS Indianapolis, and being stranded in the ocean, and then all of the sharks coming in. Like that was just a really long, scary story that a person was telling on a boat at night while kind of drunk. But just the way that it was shot and the intensity of the acting and everything about how it was set up, like that was really, really good. And that was almost like a more, to me, that kind of like a callback to sort of the more story-based horror, like Alfred Hitchcock type stuff.
Yeah.
And so there were a lot of elements and a lot of things being done in the movie that were clearly meant to be scary and also visually disturbing. Like even that arm on the beach in the beginning with all the crabs crawling on it. But there were also a lot of things in the movie that really were the opposite of what a horror movie does as far as like establishing the tone. And so if you pay attention to the music through this movie, like a prime example is when the three of them are on the boat, like getting ready to head out for their, final showdown with the shark. It's just like happy adventure music.
Right.
It's like Mary Poppins coming down the banister, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, yeah.
It happens throughout the whole movie. Like I noticed that music playing too. It reminded me of something with Quigley's Down Under. Yeah. But yeah, it's just like real happy, like adventure style music, not the dun 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 dun.
Yeah. Well, and there was also a lot of the movie was just really light, like really bright out, like lots of bright colors and lots of like clear lighting and stuff. And to some extent that worked well for the scary part in some, but it just never like established and maintained that feeling of deep, disturbing tension. And when like they were out on the boat after the initial encounter, they're still like laughing and joking, You know what I mean? Like, it was a very deliberate lightening of the mood, in my opinion. And so the thing that I guess I would compare this most to is like Jurassic Park and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
So both of those movies had real, like, terrifying, scary elements to them. Really, like, disturbing visuals, like, very real danger and violence. But I wouldn't call any of those movies horror movies.
You're right. That's a good call. Especially Indiana Jones. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Temple of Doom more so than the others.
Right.
You know, it was the one that probably got the most graphic. But
yeah.
Yeah. So it was just interesting. And then when you talk about it being a PG movie, you know, it kind of gets me thinking, what was the intended audience? And it's like he was using a lot of these horror elements that are very much meant to draw you in and to give you a feeling of suspense and empathy with the characters and like kind of keep you on the edge of your seat. But there was also a lot of like relaxing and a lot more like family movie type stuff as well that I think probably made it more appealing to a wider audience. So this one is kind of a weird, like, using elements of horror to help tell a story in a compelling way, more so than creating a movie to terrify you.
Yeah.
But then I come full circle, because there's a whole lot of people that got terrified and messed up for the rest of their lives about swimming in the ocean because of this movie.
Yeah, man. That's true. I mean, I'm sure it definitely has affected some people, but I mean, just the way that they were able to do the combination of what you just said, but like with the scenes that were intense, like it so, you know, watching it yet again for the first time, like after watching all these horror movies and stuff, like, you know, I mean, I obviously had a general idea of what was going to happen, but you know, you're seeing scenes of like Chief Brody's son with his friends in the what they call lake.
Yeah. And
you know, like that whole intensity of what's going on there.
Yeah.
And you know, because I'm thinking when that scene's happening, so this is like the 4th of July party, takes him out there. Like what I'm thinking is the shark's gonna get the kid, and that's what's gonna lead the chief to go, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
On this hunt or something. You know.
Had this been a Stephen King novel that it was based on, that's what would have happened.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I was totally expecting that to happen, and so like you were just getting like built up and, you know, like almost like pressure happening in your chest, like, shoot, you don't want the kid to die, you know, going on, and then it doesn't happen, and you're like, okay. Whew. But then at the same time, he introduces characters like Mayor Larry Vaughn, who like you just hate.
Yeah.
Because you're just like I guess I just didn't understand it. It was like, what do you mean? Like, you have to have the 4th of July party? Like, it just doesn't. You don't have to. But it just got you thinking.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been a movie, you know, that I've watched, I don't think recently, that just had me as into it as this movie had.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, I mean, I feel like this movie really masterfully used horror elements to tell the story in a way that was compelling and interesting.
Right.
And so, I mean, kind of like you were getting into there, that whole setup for the 4th of July scene where the people who know what's going on are on the phone and like freaking out and like making calls, and it's just kind of generally chaos. But as that's happening, you just see the shots of all the ferry loads after ferry loads of people arriving on the island, completely unsuspecting. And then you have all those underwater shots of the people in the water, and it's kind of coming, you know, up and down with the camera. And then there's the fake shark fin, and everybody panics and rushes to get out. And you're like, oh, is somebody about to get bit? But you're like, okay, well, it's just a fake. It's these kids, you know, that are messing around. And then immediately you see and like you have that feeling of relief, like, okay, it was a fake scare. Everything's going to be fine. And then it immediately pops up in the lake. And it knocks over the 2 boats and just straight up eats a guy. And you see his severed leg falling down through the water. And then you get that first overhead shot of the shark, which was just really, really intense. And you're like worried for the kid because they've already set you up to think that the kid's going to get eaten. And so that was just really compelling movie making.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it's just over and the shark leaves. And then it's back to, okay, everything's fine. We're all good here. And I kind of walking that line, I think it was interesting how far in both directions of intensity this movie could go.
Yeah.
But I think it was done in a way that kept it interesting and held your attention and just kind of made it a generally fun movie experience, as opposed to something where you're just like on the edge of your seat or traumatized.
Yeah, I mean, I guess another prime example is when Brody and his wife are seeing that their son is in the boat, like before the 4th of July party. He got that boat for his birthday, and Brody's trying to get him off, and the wife's like, oh, calm down. He's in the boat, and then she looks at the book and sees the shark biting the boat, and then she all of a sudden need to get out of the boat.
Yeah.
It was almost humorous. It's like, but it was intense because that what Jaws is, what the shark is, and I don't know, man. I might have to change this to that. I think it's a horror.
I know. The more I try to describe it, the more I'm like, it is, but it doesn't feel like one when you're watching it.
I think why I would have to change mine is just thinking about the end when it's like he was stuck in the water with a shark.
Mm-hmm.
Like the boat was going down.
Yeah.
He had to, it was just a battle that he had to win, and that's a true actual horror, element, being stuck with a monster that, I mean, that's, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I changed my mind.
Well, one scene that got me, and this was kind of a smaller thing, but when they're out on the water and they've kind of had their initial encounter, and now they're going and they're kind of like snapping at each other a little bit, and trying to figure out what to do next, and everybody's kind of on edge and tired and hungover, and the sheriff is tossing that chum off the back of the boat.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the shark just pops out of the water, like out of nowhere, no lead up, no foreshadowing that that's about to happen. That made me jump in my seat a little bit, just because I was not expecting it. And again, I feel like the movie made you feel the way that it wanted you to feel at every step of the way. And so for me, that kind of culminated when the scientist decided to go under in the cage,
mm-hmm.
where it's like super silent at first, and then the intense music starts and you see the shark in the distance, and then all of a sudden it's attacking the cage, and he just immediately like drops that spear,
mm-hmm.
and then not only is he not in control anymore, but the shark is bending the cage. And then all of a sudden it's like bent open the cage, and he's trapped inside trying to fight it off with the knife, which it doesn't seem to care about at all. Like, that was such a like claustrophobic, and like I feel like that tapped into a bunch of different phobias all in the same scene.
Right.
So that probably destroyed a lot of people. But it was just really good and really intense. And then he happens to get away somehow. But again, the movie got really scary for a little bit there.
Yeah. It was definitely intense. I mean, if it was like I guess if it were like a thriller and like that's the final scene and a bad guy's close to getting the good guy, you still wouldn't feel the same way that you did when you were seeing the shark almost get Hopper.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's intense.
Yeah.
So here's just a random fun little thing. So the character Quint, he was actually based off a real person. His name was Frank Mundus, Mundus. And so whoever's listening should look it up. But this dude was crazy. Like, I guess like at one time in Montauk, New York, there was like a whole bunch of shark hunting, and like you'll have to like read about it, but it was basically like you could earn, they would have like competitions, and like you could get the biggest whatever fish and get a prize, but you could also get like the biggest shark and win another prize. Like they'd have separate bets and stuff like that. And so it just started kind of a whole like shark hunting craze in New York. And I think it was like, I want to say like in the 70s, maybe 60s, maybe earlier. But anyway, it was just definitely interesting. Like I said, his name is Frank Mundus. I definitely recommend reading about him.
Interesting. Yeah, and in general, I mean, I guess that kind of gets into one thing we hadn't talked about yet, and that was sort of the societal reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
And just how quick, as soon as they like posted a reward, people just descended on the island.
Yeah.
Which I guess, based on what you just said, may have seemed a little more normal at the time.
Yeah.
If that was a thing that, was just like a national craze in the New York area or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was also like it's also plays into like the movie M, where like everyone was kind of trying to get the bad guy and all that, and also kind of putting themselves at danger in the process. Kind of similar to that, where it was just like as a viewer, just from how long the movie's been out, that the shark is incredibly large. Like it's not just like going to be an easy task, and you have 10 times the amount of people out there that are normally out in the water, you know, and that just gives them more of a, more things to, people to eat.
People who are clearly not qualified to be out there and have no idea what they're coming up against. Yeah. And just that element of them not being aware of the scale of the danger, I thought was interesting. And I also thought it was interesting how quick they were to believe that the shark had been caught, even though people were saying, like, people that knew anything were saying, like, yeah, that's definitely not the one. The bite marks don't match up with the jaw size and all that. So okay, here's another question for you, and this one's probably even more divisive than is Jaws a horror movie. Did you notice the red UFO?
The shooting star?
Yeah, if that's what you choose to believe.
Is there a conspiracy that it was something else?
I don't know. There probably is. Apparently Steven Spielberg is on record as saying that was a completely like unexpected thing. It just happened in the background while they were filming that scene, and they happened to catch it, and then like it was a good take of the scene, so they kept it. Yeah. But I mean, like, how often do you see a red shooting star during the day?
I know,
that
man.
was a little weird to me. So
yeah, I saw that. I was like, geez, that's intense. But it was almost like in two scenes. Like, I think just the way it was filmed, or maybe edited, it looked like I thought I saw it twice.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw it the first time. It said something to Katie, and then we saw it again. That's how I knew it came out.
Oh, I think it was just a early building hype for ET.
Yeah. Hey, it could have been, man. It could have been. That's funny.
This Steven Spielberg's playing in 4-dimensional chess, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. I just wish I could be like that type of person that, like, a mistake happens on something really important that you're doing. You're just like, just leave it.
Yeah.
And then it turns out good.
Yeah. Or you're like, damn, I can't make this mechanical shark work. We'll just have to keep it off screen. And then everybody's like, oh, he definitely did that to be like Alfred Hitchcock. And you're like, yeah, I did.
Yeah. So I think with this movie, it's almost like Rocky, where they weren't the first to make a movie or write a story about a shark.
And they weren't the last either.
They weren't the last for sure, but they also like changed the game. Like they not only did they make a good movie. I mean, they didn't only make a movie about it. They made like a really good movie that I think changed. I mean, think about how many movies are like, that's like Jaws that comes out now.
Like Moby Dick?
You have, like Moby Dick. I think that came out like 2 years after. You have, like even nowadays, you have Sharknado. You have Piranha 3D or what. I mean, just
Deep Blue Sea. That was a good one.
Yeah. Katie asked if that's what we were watching, for the record. I was like, we should. Out of you. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just, I think that's another thing I appreciate of it. And also the fact that, like, I have a special spot in my heart for, like, movies in the 70s and 80s, because it's just, those are my favorite.
Yeah.
And so, like, this movie was super long because it was, a 70s movie, but I was okay with it.
Same.
Like, I don't think at one point I thought, like, this is dragging. Like, it had my attention the whole time.
Yeah.
But it's also watching it for the first time.
Yeah. So coming back to it, I definitely had a lot of, like, spoiler knowledge. Like, I knew how it was going to end. I knew that the initial shark fin on the 4th of July was a fake. Like, there were a bunch of things that just, I've seen this before. I'm aware of this is what's happening. I still enjoyed it. I still, felt like it was appropriately paced. And I really do think a lot of that is because of the acting. I think that the actors played their roles in a convincing way, so you never just found yourself tuning out during a scene, like tends to happen in a lot of the stuff we watch. So,
yeah, overall, man, I was pretty happy with it.
It was also interesting that it was a creature horror that wasn't any type of like sci-fi or magic. You know what I mean? Like, it was just a really, really big shark, which is a thing that could theoretically happen.
Yeah, I think like, it's the most likely type of creature, horror that's out there. Horror movie out there. I mean, think of like Bigfoot. That might be real, but a really big shark is actually real. Like that's
like we have pictures of really big sharks.
Yeah.
Loch Ness monster.
Mm-hmm.
Chupacabra.
Yeah, this whole the thing though with this movie is the whole time it just made me want to watch the Bob's Burger episode where they have a shark attraction at the place that they live at, and it's basically like a play off of Jaws where like the electronic shark goes crazy. And anyway, it just made me want to watch Bob's Burgers.
I also like that so in high school I took a music theory class, and they were teaching, like, I forget exactly what the technical term for it is, but basically like the distance between notes. And so we had to get to the point where we could like hear, a first and a third or whatever, and know like the distance between those notes. And the way that they taught that was by pointing out like memorable, popular songs that you could use as like a frame of reference, or like jingles or whatever, to know that like that's a third or that's a fifth, whatever. And the one that they used for, I think it's the first or second, is the Jaws theme. And that was actually such a small part of this movie, but it's a thing that everybody knows.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting, that just like a thing that kind of got thrown in to add ambiance in absence of being able to show the visuals they wanted to show ends up being like such a pervasive and well-known thing throughout society. It's kind of cool.
I mean, it's crazy to think about, just the fact that like how many classic horror movies have that random music thing playing, and it all seems relatively simple, and it all accomplishes around the same thing. It's just I don't know, it's a crazy thing. I mean, like this that Jaws theme song was basically like two notes.
Yeah.
I mean, just over and over. I don't know.
And faster towards the end.
Just builds up.
Yeah. But yeah, this was an overall pleasant movie watching experience, and I enjoyed it. And next week we're going to be watching, or trying to watch if we can find it, a movie called Deep Red from 1975. So I kind of like that we're just hanging out in the 70s for a while.
Yeah, I'm cool with this. I mean, it better be scarier than Jaws, but...
Well, alright then. Until next time. Call me Ishmael.
Stay out of the water.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening. I'm going to tell you too. So this past weekend, I went down to Freeport, Texas, which is south of Houston on the coast, kind of by Lake Jackson. And my brother and I got a little fishing charter. So it was this small boat, and we went out and we were fishing kind of up through the waterways there along the coast.
Yeah.
And it was fun, and we caught a bunch of fish. But there was a part of me that was kind of like, I hope we get attacked by a big shark. I was like, I think I could do it. I think that would be the most exciting thing in the world, because all I have to do is shoot in an oxygen tank and we win. And I could definitely, since I know that now, do that before the boat sinks. But like, the movie didn't scare me about the water. It just, like, even watching it, I'm like, I kind of want to be out there in a boat chasing a shark. So if we ever schedule one of these podcasts and then I don't answer Skype,
Shark.
it's because I left it all behind, dude.
You're gonna be Quint. You're gonna be the new Quint.
I know. That's what I've never had this much clarity on what I wanted to do in life.